Harper's Kennel Stella, Missouri is proud to be sponsoring this portion of broadcasting on KNEO. Owned by Judy and Danny Harper, Harper's Kennel of Stella, Missouri specializes in French Bulldogs. For more information, the phone number is 417-628-3083.
Welcome to Crosspoint. An interactive program featuring ministers and leaders of the Christian community addressing the issues that are challenging the church today. Here's your host, Mark Taylor.
The culture is undergoing radical change. We see the evidence all around us. Welcome to Crosspoint. Today I have with me as my guest is Corey Miller. He serves as president and CEO of RatioChristi.org. He's an author, and Corey's thought is centered on the intersection of faith, reason, and culture. Well, today here on Crosspoint, I'm talking with Corey Miller, and we're talking about confronting the cultural revolution from our classroom to your community, folks. And it's the Progressive Miseducation of America. And Corey, I appreciate you joining us here on Crosspoint, and I've noticed here in your book, I'm looking at page 16 at the moment, you talk about how you've studied the primary literature of major revolutions, from Russia and the Chinese, from the East, American English, French, West, to help understand our current crisis, in addition to being a philosopher and theologian. And you say, I have a great interest in culture as a student of culture. So what did you find out by studying these and how this relates to what we're talking about today?
Yeah, well, first, thanks for having me on your program. I appreciate that. The book is sort of three different books. It looks at what just happened to America. This is no longer Grandma's America. Everything from academia to media to the churches to K through 12 education, it's everywhere. This residue, this ideology of a cultural revolution. And then I point to the universities and say that's where it came from, and give the history of the universities, how we started those and lost them in two ideological revolutions. The first one was scientific naturalism, which impacted the churches and gave us the social gospel and liberal Protestant theology. The second one is what we're dealing with now, and that is an amalgam of postmodern cultural Marxism. So in answering your question, it is a form of Western Marxism, the revolution that we are in, and that is a soft form of revolution, a soft revolution. It doesn't always come with tanks and guns. This one in particular, I go back to Antonio Gramsci, who never got out of prison because Mussolini imprisoned him for life, but he wrote the prison notes, and those got mediated to us right here in my state of Indiana at Notre Dame by a Marxist professor named Joseph Buttigieg, father of Mayor Pete. And Gramsci distinguished between, when he was looking at hard and soft revolutions, he was looking at the Russian and the Chinese kinds of revolutions, for example. Those kinds of revolutions go after the law enforcement and military and government, and then they're poised for a frontal assault where you can move straight in. But in the West, he and the critical theory schools, critical race theory, gender theory, pedagogy, all of those, they all recognized, both in Germany and in Italy, that in the West, you couldn't do that. It was like you had this castle and a moat, and every time shots were fired, it'd be like this thing became a living cell, and it would self-regenerate because of the not political society, but what he called civil society, the soft tissue of culture. And that included academia, media, and ecclesia, religion, church. And he said in the West, the only way that a Marxist revolution is going to happen is if you ensconce yourselves sufficiently and embed yourselves sufficiently in these institutions in the West. Again, academia, media, ecclesia. And that has happened. This critical queer theory, critical pedagogy, critical race theory, Marxism has ensconced itself. It's in campus ministries, Christian academic societies, seminaries, and churches. So the barbarians are no longer at the gates; they're in the citadel, and that's the battle we're encountering right now.
Okay, so you mentioned the word revolution, and then I was looking through your book and the notes, and you do talk about a third revolution. You talk about how do we need to prepare ourselves. You encourage all hands to be on deck, especially Christians. And why is that?
Well, what I mean by the all hands on deck, I say it's the university, stupid. We need a third revolution, an ideological, a Jesus movement revolution, like the ones that founded Harvard, Princeton, and Yale, and the universities for the first 200 years, from 1636 until 1840. Almost every single college and university in America had a president who was also a member of the clergy and taught the capstone course their senior year on moral philosophy. These were all Christ-centered, Protestant Christ-centered institutions in particular. And the university's takeover has been one of the greatest travesties of Western civilization, because as goes the university, so goes the culture. As goes the U.S. university, so goes the world. It is literally the most influential institution shaping civilization. And so I'm calling for a third revolution, that we re-infiltrate the universities. And there needs to be a coalition for this, and I line this up and talk about how this can be done in the book and how we're already being part of it. But I say that, look, most people aren't called to the universities, but everybody needs to prepare for the poisonous ideology coming out of the universities, because you can't hide from it. It's going into your churches, it's getting into your families, and you can't even go into your closet anymore. It's going there. You've got an iPhone, and your middle schoolers are going trans because they're being influenced by the culture that way. So this is a poisonous ideology, and if pastors are not equipping their people, and the statistics say they're not, and if parents are hoping that after 18 years you train them up in the way they should go, and when they get older and they go to college, they get conscripted to work for the other side, that's not how the proverb is supposed to go. But it's what's happening right now because of the college campuses. So everybody needs to understand what the ideology is, and so I address pastors, parents and grandparents, professors and educators, parachurches, political allies, philanthropists and donors, and prayers. All hands on deck. It's the university, stupid. Politics is downstream from culture, culture from education, and at the apex of education is the university.
Okay, so you talk and mention, about how we need to know certain things. Part 1 of your book talks about Woke 101. Now, just for our listeners' sake out there, because we have them all the time that ask me, well, what does woke really mean? Can you kind of explain what we're talking about when we talk about woke?
It is making sacred certain identity groups that are understood through secret knowledge, and only those oppressed identity groups can properly understand it, talk about it with moral authority, and lead the way to social change. So if I could disabuse your listenership about what DEI is and reformulate it as DIE, not just for rhetorical purposes, I'll do that. As a trained philosopher, we have 3 branches in philosophy. I'm going to use big words at the beginning and just bring it home after. You've got at the very bottom the foundational metaphysics, or what is real. Then you've got epistemology, and that is, how do I know what is real? And then you've got ethics. How do I then live based on what I know about reality? And so if we start at the bottom, the most foundational, what is real with respect to DIE, diversity, inclusivity, equity. The D in academia, among those who are the movers and pushers of this ideology, means diversity, but not like you think it means, like celebrate different people and walks of life and ethnicities and so forth. It means go out and locate all of the various classes and polarities, subgroups that are at war with one another. Blacks versus whites, rich versus poor, homo versus hetero, cis versus trans, able-bodied versus disabled, you name it. It's no longer just the old Marxism that was rich versus poor, haves and have-nots. Well, once you've got all those identity groups or identity powers, which is where identity politics comes from, now the next step is inclusivity. You exclude all the oppressor groups, the whites, the males, the Christians who are dominating religion in the country, the heterosexuals, you name it, race, class, sex, gender, ethnicity. You exclude all the oppressor groups. And you're in one of the two groups. You can't not be. Everybody, by necessity, is in one of the two, oppressor or oppressee, victim or victimizer, have or have not groups. And instead, you exalt or include, you platform and give morally authoritative voice to those oppressed groups. Sometimes they have multiple layers of oppression. For example, not only are you black, but you're a female black. Not only are you female black, but you're a lesbian female black. And I guess if you're a lesbian female black hopping on one leg, you're like the perfect unicorn of this. And you've got multiple layers of enlightenment, or what we call woke. So you're at that second level of philosophy. How do we know? Well, only those groups that have been oppressed are in the know. And so only those groups that are now woke, awakened, are the ones who should be platformed. And so we start having these racial quotas or female quotas or whatever for admissions policies at Harvard, for pilots for United, for security guards to guard the president, for heart surgeons in med school, all across the board. And why we're doing this leads to the next one, and that is E, D-I-E, equity. If the problem is oppression, the solution is liberation. And from this, we call this social justice or equity. And that is righting the wrongs of this power imbalance. And that's what it's repair, revenge, reparations, and so forth. That's what the E is, D-I-E. That's Marxism.
Yeah.
That's wokeness.
Now, you talk about here in the book, I believe it's in the second part there of the or second chapter of the first area. You talk about in that area about friction between the letters, and you talk about once you had a student, and so in other words, you've been up on the front lines where you've had students yelling at you and calling you down and asking you to want to apologize and to correct your information. Tell us a little bit about how that goes, because, we see clips of it here and there where people, address somebody and they won't even give them the opportunity to speak. How do you deal with this, like student here on page 62 that had stood up, and said, about it was a sexuality area of text, and, started yelling, calling people homophobes, and wanted, people to just, apologize for how they treated them and stuff. I mean, we see this all the time where, when you try to have an argument or have a discussion, whatever you want to call it, with the folks on the other side, they just don't want to allow it. They want to fight back. They want to make noise. They don't want your opinion.
That's right. I mean, this is how, just for some background on this is how much America has changed. I mean, in the last 25 years, Americans said that patriotism was very important at 70%. 25 years later, it's at 38%. Religion's very important. It's 62%. Now it's at 39%. Raising kids is very important. 59%. Now it's at 30%. And just in the last 5 years, what was deemed the last living virtue in America, often associated with liberals, the belief in tolerance, is at 58%, down from 80% just 5 years ago. So when this former pastor who turned gay charged me with creating a suicidal environment simply because I gave both sides to the issue on homosexuality, in fact, it was completely lopsided in favor of the other side. My textbook that I required was by an atheist philosopher who bashed the Bible and was pro-homosexual. So my coming out as a Christian professor to give an alternative natural law argument, biomedical argument from harm about rectal intercourse was greeted with very much intolerance. And when I had a talk with the student after he had gone to the administration for trying to get me fired, I said, "What about tolerance?" He smiled at me and said, "I don't believe in being tolerant to the intolerant." In other words, these people don't believe in free speech or in what I would call viewpoint diversity. That's not what's happening at the universities. There's no viewpoint diversity. Listen to this statistic. This was by Yale, a national student poll across the nation. And this was 8 years ago, so it's worse now. 48% support campus speech codes. In other words, there's a lexicon of thou shalt nots, politically incorrect words you're not supposed to say. 81% say that words are a form of violence. It's not that violence is violence, but that words are a form of violence. And this is why Charlie Kirk had to die, because he allegedly was erasing the existence of trans people. He was murdering them by speaking words of disagreement, and 33% say that physical violence is justified to prevent hate speech. That's 1 in 3 students. That was 8 years ago. The bad thing is 66% say that hate speech is anything a student believes to be considered hurtful to a particular person. Wow. That's where the students are at. Later, maybe we'll get into it, tell you where the professors are at. But this is why there is a culture of assassination right now in large scale. It's not just fringe groups. It's very large. The Rutgers study showed that 56% of those who self-identify as left-leaning think that it's justifiable to assassinate Donald Trump. 51% think that it's justifiable to assassinate Elon Musk.
Yeah, we've got some real issues. Folks, stay with us, and we're going to have more about the progressive miseducation of America right after this. This is Mark Taylor. If you miss a broadcast of Crosspoint, you can always go to our website at www.kneo.org and click on the programs page. There you can access the current Crosspoint program as well as the last 4 programs that have been aired. Never miss another Crosspoint program again. Go to www.kneo.org today. Welcome back to Crosspoint. I'm Mark Taylor, and my guest today is Corey Miller. We're talking about the progressive miseducation of America. This is about confronting the cultural revolution from the classroom to your community, folks. And Corey, if people want to find out more about this book and what you do there at your ministry, tell people how they could go about doing that.
They can go to ratio.link. That is like mathematical ratio, ratio.link/PMA for Progressive Miseducation of America. The reason I send people to ratio.link/PMA is because it's, one, got my book on there, The Progressive Miseducation of America. They can order it from there. It takes them straight to Amazon. They can also schedule me to come speak to their churches, campuses, or conferences. I'm doing that nationally for the next 12 to 24 months. They can also look at our website from there and see what we do on campus. Over 100 college campuses. We focus on apologetics evangelism, helping people give reasons for why they believe what they believe in science, philosophy, history, etc. And they can look at our booklets, our product line. We've got almost 60 booklets that are 25 pages each, 11th grade reading level, digital or printable, on everything from the questions about science, suffering, scripture, to race, class, sex, gender, ethnicity. Almost all of these are written by people with PhDs. The one on trans, for example, was not only someone with a PhD, but someone who was formerly trans. The one on homosexuality, not only by someone who's working on a PhD, but was formerly lesbian. The one on Is Christianity a White Man's Religion? Not only has a doctorate, but was black. And guess what? Still is black. But you have equipment there so that churches, home groups, cell groups, even professors. I know Sean McDowell from Biola uses these for his classes. I know Purdue professors who at least do, lunch study groups on these. So they're fantastic resources. So if you go to ratio.link/PMA for Progressive Miseducation of America, You can see my speaking schedule. You can invite me in, look at our product line, go to the rest of our website, order the book, and right there you can get the first chapter and introduction for free if you wanted to just take a look at it first.
All right. Now, chapter 3 of the book, it brought up a name that goes back where I was years ago watching the Reverend Jesse Jackson lead protesters, and he was always stirring up something, and then Al Sharpton followed him, and Jackson was always talking about being a preacher, the same as Sharpton. But these guys are about as far from preaching the gospel from the Bible. But why do they use people like this that have this name Reverend with them? Is that also part of this plan in kind of miseducation of America?
Number one, it's part of what generally happens anyway, right? You've got pastors that are wolves in sheep's clothing, that are, maybe liberal. I mean, look at the recent new head of the Church of England. Some of these people love to celebrate Halloween really early on by putting on these costumes of clergy. She's pro-gay, pro-abortion, undermines the biblical text. You've got leaders within certain denominations of Christianity in the United States that are openly gay or trans. So they want to put the title Reverend on there to baptize their poisonous non-biblical ideology. And Reverend Jesse Jackson, he's not doing pastoral work. He's a politician or a political activist, better yet, because he's not elected, but he is the instrument of the political left politicians.
Yeah.
By the way, if I could, when I say left, I don't mean liberal. We are in a revolution in this country. Many of the liberals have actually joined in the politics, the Republican Party, because they've been either conscripted and assimilated into the Marxist movement in the Democratic Party, or they've been ousted and kicked out and they've gone to the other side. And this is why you look at the situation in our politics at the highest level. I mean, Trump was a Democrat. Elon Musk was a lifelong Democrat. Trump's cabinet has two very recent presidential candidates that were Democrats, like Tulsi Gabbard and RFK, a Kennedy of all people. In the Republican Party, you even have Bruce Jenner, i.e. Caitlyn Jenner, who ran for the Republican governorship. And Joe Rogan has probably gone Republican. Even Bill Maher is flirting with it. What in the world is going on? Well, those people are liberal. They've not been taken over by this woke mind virus of cultural Marxism. They're liberal, like yesterday's liberals, when you had a difference between liberal and conservative, Democrat and Republican. And so they've joined basically the all-American party that includes, maybe the first 15 years of this millennium, Democrats and Republicans, and now they're in one party, which is really interesting. Whereas in the Democratic Party, it's been taken over by Marxism. That's what all of this DIE stuff is. They're fine letters, they're names that sound good, diversity, inclusivity, equity, but they're absolute poison, and they're ideology that comes from abroad, not even from America. So you're finding that stuff in our churches, you're finding it in our campus ministries, in our Christian academic societies. So it really is not a surprise if you have someone with the name Reverend that, is floating this new ideology.
So you also talk here about you say that the menace of mindless Christianity has got to go. What do you mean when you say that? Are we as Christians, many of us, not doing what Christians ought to be doing?
Correct. 30 years ago, Mark Knoll, historian first at Wheaton, and I think he went to Notre Dame and maybe retired there. He wrote a book 30 years ago called The Scandal of the Evangelical Mind. And early on, he tells you what the scandal is, and it's that there isn't much of an evangelical mind. So about a century ago, Christianity took a turn for the worst in America and was inconsistent with the history of Christian thought, but it became brainless, mindless. It decided it was going to retain the heart of Christ and the hands of Christ, soup kitchens and emotional worship time, but it was going to excommunicate the head of Christ. And that's what we've done, is we've become a headless Christian movement, and that's how this stuff has entered into the churches, past the gates of the shepherds and so forth. We abdicated our role and responsibility in high culture, and we gave up the universities, and all we were doing was going for harvest crusade after harvest crusade after harvest crusade. But as every farmer knows, if you're not sowing seed, you cannot reap the harvest. And so now, because of what we did, our universities, the ratio of liberal to conservative is 12-1 for those retiring. It's 23-1 for those who just got tenure and have 30, 40 years ahead of them. It's 27-1 at the highest schools, the Ivy Leagues. And, at Yale, about a month or so ago, their statistics for their social sciences and humanities, 78-1. Well, that's the professors. That's what we're sending our kids into, and grandpas and grandmas and moms and dads are literally sending their kids unprepared into this lion's den and literally paying for the apostasy of their own children. Well, it gets worse when you get to the churches where we're supposed to have our shepherds. The American Worldview inventory that comes out of Arizona Christian University every year. They said, how many Americans hold a biblical worldview? And you want to know what that means first. A belief in God's existence. All humans are sinners, need a Savior. Jesus is the only way. The Bible is God's Word and reliable in all it teaches. Absolute truth exists, grounded in God. The purpose for life is to know, love, and serve God. And success is understood through faithful obedience to God. Seems to be common sense. When you look at the stats, 6% of Americans hold a biblical worldview in 2022. A year later, it was 4%. Among pastors, it's 37%. But once you say evangelical or non-denominational pastors, now we get excited because the number is higher. It's 51 to 57%. We are doomed if that is true. That's what our pastors are doing. So don't tell me that we are having a brain-filled conversation in the congregation about biblical truth and preparing them to go off into these secular baptismal fonts. If both parents are working full-time, they're exhausted when they get home. A lot of parents have turned over their spiritual education to their youth pastor, whose statistics are even worse than for the senior pastors. We have got to excommunicate this menace of mindless Christianity and start following Jesus again, who didn't invite us but commanded us to love God with our minds.
Yeah. Now, on page 107 of the book, it's an area called Math, Medicine, Swoon Under the Spell. And you say, if society chooses social justice and quotas over justice and merit, it will erode excellence in all facets of life for all people. We hear them talking about, well, this group here, this color skin here, or whatever, that's what we're trying to protect. But what in reality, everybody's going to be in trouble if they continue to let this just continue to erode through our education system. Is that correct? It won't matter what color you are in the end.
That's right. I used to, play a little trick with my students at Indiana University. I would say, okay, I got the tests back, and they didn't look good. There are this many A's, many B's, many C's, D's, F's. I said, I recognize that there's been systemic problems in the past, institutional problems in the past. We're not playing with a fair deck here. Nobody is coming to this test with equality. And so, some of you have had private school, others public, et cetera, et cetera. So what we're going to do is we're just going to give everybody in the class a B. How's that sound? Well, all the F, D, and C students said, yay, and screamed and hollered in excitement. The A students in agony said no. Well, they were outnumbered. And I said, well, A students, you're still an A student. What's that going to do to you? And they said, we're not going to study as hard because we know we're not going to get our A. We're going to all get B's. I said to the B student, what's that going to do to you? We don't need to study as hard. We're all going to get B's. C students, absolutely not. We don't need to study as hard. We're going to get a better grade than what we got. D and F students, same thing. So the next test comes around, and there were no A's. There were just B's, C's, D's, and F's. The next one comes around, there were C's, D's, and F's. Next one, D's and F's. Next one, they all flunked out. That's what Marxism does. It makes everybody poorer in communist countries. There's no innovation. There's no aspiration to excellence. There's no payback for any of it. And that's why communism has never worked. Now, if you apply this to race, class, sex, gender, ethnicity, it makes everybody mediocre and worse. And so when we drop the admissions scores at Harvard by 20 percentage points to admit black students over and against, say, white and Asian, number one, that's going to eliminate many of the brains who could have made inventions that could have cured cancer. But what it's also going to do is it's going to bring people in whose standardized test scores don't really qualify them to be there, and they're going to flunk out. And furthermore, once you start putting it into areas of like medicine, and you're doing this, and they are, in med schools, or for hiring of airline pilots at United Airlines, which the CEO said that they were doing as well, that is going to cost people lives. Now, I don't care when someone is giving me heart surgery what color they are or what they have between their legs. What I care about is whether they pass the test and can actually do a successful heart surgery. What I care about is whether the pilot can actually fly the plane, not what color they are or what's between their legs. Race, sex, class, gender, that stuff is just a Marxist social experiment to redistribute the wealth of power as they see it across the board so that everybody has the same iPhone, everybody has the same Toyota. Eventually there will no longer be Toyotas. There will no longer be iPhones. We're going to go back to flip phones, and people are going to die. Like happens in Marxist countries all the time. They killed 100 million of their own people. This stuff is not good. This is not what America was built on. America was built on "in God we trust." No, that coin expression wasn't there at that time, but endowed by our Creator was. Our constitutional rights come from our rights as humans, as such, in virtue of being human, which are inalienable. Government can't give them because government never took them away. And we have our marching orders, and it's from the Jewish guy named Jesus, not from the Jewish guy named Marx.
Well, folks, stay with us. We're going to have more as we visit with Corey Miller here on Crosspoint right after this.
Offering words to encourage, teaching to inspire, and truth that defines real life.
This is who we are, what we offer, and what you can expect.
91.7 The Word.
And welcome back to Crosspoint. Thanks for joining us today. We're talking about the Progressive Miseducation of America. We're talking with Corey Miller. Now, Corey, if people want to find out more about this book and your ministry, how do they go about doing that?
Yeah, again, they can either go straight to Amazon for the Progressive Miseducation of America, or you can go to our website at ratio, like mathematical ratio, .link /PMA for Progressive Miseducation America. That is ratio.link/PMA.
All right. Now, back in Chapter 7 of the book, you do a brief history there of the university and the extreme mission drift. But what about what they're teaching in the education system as we go down a little bit out of that university, go into the high schools and in the grade schools? Is the very same things being drifted into those, or are they holding a little bit better ground in them areas?
Well, a number of years ago, there was a Brazilian Marxist named Paulo Freire, and he wrote the book that has sold millions of copies, called The Pedagogy of the Oppressed. And this is all about critical pedagogy. It's the same thing as critical race theory, critical gender theory, critical queer theory, critical iceberg theory. It is everything. It's Marxism. And this guy's views, he wrote the foreword to the father of modern black liberation theology's book, James Cone, who was the mentor of Obama's pastor and of Raphael Warnock, senator in Georgia, who did the eulogy for him. Black liberation theology is critical race theory. It's Marxism more than it is Christianity. Well, this pedagogy of the oppressed, this Brazilian Marxist, this is stuff for the colleges of education. This guy's name has been cited the fourth most of any scholar in the social sciences and the humanities. His views have become the Bible for the colleges of education, training K through 12 students in the United States. Everybody who is in K through 12 is imbibing this Brazilian Marxist viewpoints in their curriculum. And case in point, my daughter is a student in the elementary education program at Purdue University, which is close by where I'm at, where our headquarters is at for Ratio Christi. And I ask her every semester to give me her syllabi for all of her classes. And I sniffed this stuff out. It's there. This is not University of Berkeley. This is Purdue University, which the secular rights organization called FIRE, the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, awarded Purdue this year with the number one spot for a public university for academic freedom. Well, that's Purdue. That's the elementary ed schools. That's pumping out the K through 12 educators. Purdue is the first university where I lost my first attempt at a PhD. I was in my fifth year, all but dissertation, and I had to go on for a second time because I was told I had too much of a faith perspective. That's one of the better public universities, one of the best. How much worse then when you go down the line, especially when you go to Harvard, Princeton, Yale, and so forth. And so, yes, it's absolutely in our K through 12. And when you think about it, when Christians go to the secular university and they get an elementary ed degree or a K through 12 degree or whatever, and even if they don't want to go back into the public school system and teach in the public school system, and they go into a private Christian school, they're taking what they've learned with them. And this is why I'm saying you cannot escape this. You as parents, you as pastors listening to this, you need to know the ideology coming out of these poisonous wells in the university, because it's coming into your family, it's coming into your Christian schools, it's coming into your homes, it's coming into your closet. The Bible says in 1 Peter 3:15, it commands, doesn't invite or suggest, it's an imperative, be prepared to give an answer for everyone who asks you for the reason for the hope that's in you, and do it with gentleness and respect. There we have the head, the heart, and the hands of Christ. You need to know, and as Paul says, beware of false philosophy. Well, you can't beware of false philosophy if you're not even aware of false philosophy. So that's what my book, The Progressive Miseducation of America, helps to do, and that is to educate you. And that's what our ministry does on campuses, and that's what our product line does on the website. If you want to order any one of those 25-page booklets, if people give us their email address, they can download all of those for free. You just have to put up with our great information, what I call our propaganda newsletters as a joke, monthly to update you on what's going on in the universities. But you can have those resources. There's no excuse for parents or pastors who don't have the time or can't have the resources. You don't have to read 500-page books. All of these booklets are there covering all these issues. And if you want more, they all reference the author's 500-page book. So do something, do something, do something. This is a matter of civilizational life and death. This stuff is in our churches. It's in the campus ministries. It's in the seminaries. Prepare yourself or else.
So it's kind of like what you're talking about as I'm looking here at part 3 of the book, how should we respond? And we had talked about the third revolution. But on the page before that, page 200, it says Christians have remarkable resources. Most simply have no idea of what they or where to find them. But Christian, spiritual, and intellectual leaders should know how to and where to find them and be able to unlock the potential. So how do they do this to get the people? Are you saying our leadership in these areas are the ones that are going to have to help a lot of the people come awake to this stuff? And if our leadership fails us, we are in trouble?
Right, and so when I'm making the case that we need to be able to display to people that Christianity is good for the world, because right now what they're saying is not just that it's false, but that it's harmful, it's hideous, it's hateful, it's oppressive. So we need to be able to show that Christianity is good for the world, not just for the next life, but for this life, and that it's reasonable and that it's true. And then I have a direct call, a clarion call to pastors to say, stop with the fads of skinny jeans and fog machines. Instead, get back to what your job is, and that is to equip the saints for works of ministry through Christian thought in the Scriptures and in good Christian theology and philosophy. And then for the parents and grandparents, it's great when, just like the deacons came about in the book of Acts, because there was practical need so that the elders could focus on, the prayers and the Word of God. So also we came about with youth pastors at a certain time because our country was turning and many kids didn't have Christian parents, so we wanted a youth pastor. Well, then the Christian parents said, can I take advantage of that too? Hey, here's my kid on Wednesday night. In fact, have my kid for the next 18 years, and you just train them up with their spiritual, education. That's not what Scripture says the parent's job is. The parent's job is the primary role. And the youth pastor, unfortunately, is less equipped than the pastor, and I told you what the statistics bear out in that today. You cannot trust in many churches to equip your family or your kids, and you shouldn't be anyway. You should be doing the work yourself. It is what it is. Parents are working 2 jobs. Maybe that's for standard of living issues. Maybe it's to keep up with economic issues that we've created for ourselves as a culture by electing governments that have created all this wasteful inflation and so forth. Whatever the case is, you're exhausted, you both work, but look, you chose to have the child or the children. And if you do not equip them, somebody will. And then I go on to parachurches because some of them are failing and want to come alongside them. There are many good Christian thought organizations, apologetics organizations. Ours is just one of them. Ratio Christi is just one. We're unique and significant because we're on the campus, the most influential institution shaping civilization. But there's a lot of them out there. So there's no excuse for mindless Christianity. And from there, we move on to professors and educators. You guys are at the vanguard. You need to be equipped with this stuff so that you, first of all, can sniff out the stuff that you've learned through your PhDs or through the colleges of education, and be able to help the church out in that way. And then political allies, and I mean everyone from Alliance Defending Freedom to Elon Musk to Donald Trump to atheist classical liberals who are for viewpoint diversity and for free speech and so forth. Churchill and FDR allied themselves with Stalin. It was limited, and it was somewhat perilous, but it was necessary at the time. We need to think about some of these political alliances. And then prayers for revival and for Jesus movement like revolution or reformation. When you look at all the movements that have happened in Christianity in the last 75 years, from Azusa to Asbury College to Yale, they've all been associated with the college campuses. Even if you go back to the Protestant Reformation, it wasn't Pastor Luther or Brother Luther, it was Professor Luther, Dr. Luther in Wittenberg. If we want to move the culture, we must move the university. That's where our focus needs to be. Obviously, we need to protect our own, equip our flocks, our families, our business people, and so forth. But the university must be retaken.
Do you see some of this happening? I mean, we've watched some of us what's happened with Asbury, and then from there now, Asbury actually just has a website you can follow revival in different colleges around. Is there hope there? Are you seeing things out there that helps you to say
sure
that we're on the edge maybe of the cusp of this maybe third great awakening or something?
Well, revivals come and go. You get a breath of air and you feel good. You can then exhale. When 9/11 happened, everybody went back to church for 24 hours and then they forgot about it. When Charlie Kirk got assassinated, everyone went back to church, and everybody wants to buy a Bible now and listen to Christian music. And because of where our culture is at, you've had people even like Richard Dawkins call himself a cultural Christian, or Elon Musk, a cultural Christian, or Jordan Peterson, an existentialist Christian. What they've been seeing is we've gone so radical, in such a rapid speed, that we're able to see at a macro level what the civilization, what the culture would look like if we really did eradicate Christianity. And some of these guys now are coming back saying, we want the fruit, but some of them don't want the root that produces the fruit. They think that they can get these beautiful, tasty apples indefinitely from the supermarkets and don't realize that those apples in the supermarkets themselves got there by coming from an apple tree somewhere. And so there needs to be a Jesus revolution, and it needs to be well endowed, well supported, and it needs to be well thought out with conviction to have some sustainability and durability. It can't be like an overnight revival, a tent revival, something that's done on emotions or short term. The Charlie Kirk moment is a worldwide phenomenon. It's amazing. We're seeing people at higher rates come to Christ on our campuses right now. But how long is this going to last? We need to reinfiltrate the infrastructure and look at things that are long-term. Revivals are always short-term. They by definition, it's a revived time. They don't last forever. We need durability and sustainability. So one of the things that Ratio Christi is doing, and I won't say the name of the groups on campus, they're not called Ratio Christi because they are clandestine, but we are, so any of your listeners who want to help fund this or know of PhD students that would qualify, anyone that gets into a top 100 school, we are trying to provide some funding to, for particular candidates. I don't mean anyone, but the requirement is you get into a top 100 college or university, and we will consider you as a candidate, and then we will develop your cohort into a fraternal movement of missional professors. Not professors who happen to be Christians, but Christian professors, missional professors. And because they're in the top 100 schools, and these students are tasked with launching chapters of other Christian PhD students, so they're 10xing themselves every year. Over 10 years, that's 100 trained. If you and each one of these professors has 15,000 students over their lifetime, you fund one Malik academic fellow, that's what we call them, that's going to reach 1.5 million students over 40 years with that 10-year emphasis on that campus. What if we funded 10 of them? What if we funded 100 of them, 1,000? Now we've got a game plan for the long march through the institutions, not just to establish a beachhead like Normandy in World War II, but to get on Normandy and reclaim the mainland.
Thank you so much, Corey. We're out of time, but really do, again, tell people just how they can get a hold of your information and your book that we've been talking about. Ratio.link or ratio.link/PMA for Progressive Miseducation America. If you are in charge of or know someone who is of a campus, church, or a conference, I am going to be on the speaking tour for the next 12 to 24 months. Thank you for being out there on those tours, out there trying to make a difference, and I know that you are, and we do appreciate you, too, being with us and taking the time to be our guest today here on Crosspoint. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it. Well, that was a good interview we had today with Corey. Good information that we gathered up there. Folks, you know, we have a job to do. We're called to do it. And it all centers around, you know, these fellows write books and stuff, and they're good. They teach us. We learn from them, and we need to be reading them. And we always need to read this book of Mother Hand, the Holy Bible. That's what everything boils down to, the Word of God. It's got the power to withstand everything you come up against. It contains the directives you need to walk through this life. You'll find encouragement. It's the inspired words of God that's never outdated. And the Bible contains the most important words you're ever going to read and certainly ever follow. Be sure and join us again next time as we again discuss issues that are affecting the church. Have a great week. Allow God to use you for His purposes so that greater things can be done. Make your life count in God's plans for eternity. I'm Mark Taylor.
Crosspoint is a program produced in Studio 101 at KNEO Radio. Not all of the views on Crosspoint reflect those of the management or staff of KNEO. You may contact the Crosspoint program at 10827 Highway 86 East, Neosho, Missouri 64850, or by email crosspoint@kneo.org. You can hear Crosspoint 4 times a week: Saturday morning at 1, Saturday afternoon at 2, Saturday evening at 9, and Sunday evening at 7. You can also listen anytime online at kneo.org.